Welcome to The Art of Being Alive, the podcast where we explore the depths of mental health, healing, and the beautiful process of inner work.
We believe that life is more than just existing. It's about engaging deeply, living with intention, and creating your own unique masterpiece through self-discovery and growth.
I'm Hunter, and I'm joined by my amazing co-host Riley. Together, we're here to guide you on a journey toward embracing the art of truly living.
Whether you want to grow your resilience and emotional well-being, or are simply seeking inspiration to live more mindfully, you're in the right place. We're here to cultivate a community that values presence, healing, and the continual pursuit of inner peace and fulfillment.
So, let's dive in, and together, let's discover the art of being alive.
I got up, got dressed. I look like Cadet Kelly from, did you ever watch that movie from Disney with Hannah
No.
or Hilary Duff? You don't know what I'm
No. No.
Did you guys have the you guys have the Disney Channel in Canada?
Yeah, but we only, like at my mom's, we only had basic cable. At my
Okay.
dad's, I think we had it, but I didn't know all the shows.
Yeah, I was a Disney freak. And so I'm like, who dressed me this morning? Got a brown top on and I'm wearing green jogger cargos.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm ready for a war on this podcast today.
Oh my goodness.
uh, okay. So I'd messaged you and told you like a theme for today just kind of came through. And
Yes.
so what I'm hoping that our listeners gain from today is the impact of fully feeling your feelings.
Mm, yeah.
And so I'm going to share a little story that has happened in the last few days to kind of paint this picture of where we're going. A
Okay.
few days ago, in the news was announced that there were teenagers that stole a vehicle, was in a high-speed car chase. Two of them were brothers, and then they had friends in the car. There's only been one survivor, which was a friend. Two of them were brothers, and they passed away. The driver passed away. The brother in the passenger seat passed away. And then it came out on who this child was, and it was a former student of mine.
Mm,
Had this student for 2.5 years. Nobody wants to see a child pass.
yeah.
Death of a child is just horrific. Should never happen, ever, no matter what the cause. It's just, we don't want to see it. But if I'm being honest, when I asked myself, am I surprised when it came out who was the driver? Not at all.
Mm,
Wasn't surprised one bit. And the point of me telling this story is when we do not allow ourselves and our children to fully feel the weight of our choices, our mistakes, or the events that happen to us, a pattern begins to be created. When we don't allow our children to feel what we have done, it doesn't allow complete closure. The lesson doesn't come through. And unfortunately for this student that I had had for years, this was a pattern.
mm,
This child had made poor choice after poor choice after poor choice, and he was never fully given the consequences of his own actions, or he was never sat with and fully processed. And so what we know as an undeveloped mind is that we just keep continuing to go because we feel invincible, right?
yeah.
Or we don't have those that fully land in. Our critical thinking skills don't fully develop. And we rob our children and ourselves of learning the lesson. We rob ourselves of seeing it from a different perspective. And so my point of telling this story is to dive into this topic of letting ourselves fully feel what has happened to us or the choices that we have made.
Yeah.
Because when we don't do that, it becomes incomplete in our bodies and we repeat the pattern over and over and over again. And we do this as adults, but it starts out to us when we are children. And
Absolutely.
unfortunately, for this child, he started a pattern at a very young age and it got him killed.
And like as you were even telling that story, like I could feel that like you're choked up, right? Like you're obviously deeply affected by this. And so I guess like I'm curious like what your process of fully feeling this has been since you heard the news. If you're open to sharing.
Yeah, I mean, you just go through like a wave of emotion. Like you're angry and you're sad and you're disappointed and you want to point the blame somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, but they're children. Like children make mistakes, but I know as an educated adult and looking at patterns of behavior as an educated adult and what it means to like process the things that happen to you at a young age, we could have had a totally different outcome. He could be living a totally different life if early on, fourth grade, third grade, fifth grade, he felt the weight of choices that he was made and was supported in it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Middle school, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, watching him. And so I'm trying to like conceptualize it in my mind, but it's sad. You never want to see a child die. And he took his brother with him.
Mhm.
And the friend that was in the car is going to have to live with that forever and their injuries that they're trying to overcome. I mean, it's just a ripple effect in so many areas. But I think that this can be such an amazing lesson learned for parents, people who don't have parents, for yourselves. The things that we avoid create a wound within us.
Yeah.
And so sometimes those heavy feelings we shove to the side. And so we don't want our children to suffer. If we want to take their pain away. And so oftentimes, or we don't want to be the bad guy that
Hmm.
layers on guilt and shame. And there's such a fine line of making your child feel guilt and shame for the things that they have done when they're young. But at the same time, if we don't let them feel any of that, they begin to think that they're invincible.
Yeah.
And then we are those children and we grow up and we avoid those deep feelings, sadness, anger, grief, shame, guilt. We don't want to look at it. We don't want to fully feel it. We don't want to let it fully process. And so it doesn't become a complete cycle in our bodies. And we keep refeeling that wound, re-going into that pattern over and over in our lives, whether that's relationship, finances, sense of self.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, like likely, like, and I don't know, obviously, but likely it kind of comes down to like, yeah, the parents didn't even know how to feel their own emotions, right? Like they didn't have a map, they didn't have the skills from their own parents. And so then, like someone else, especially their child's emotions coming up, made them so uncomfortable, right? That they just wanted that to go away for them. And again, I don't know these people, like I'm not saying this is their story, but now I guess just speaking more generally, like it is this intergenerational kind of cycle that we pass down of like avoiding and not kind of learning to move through emotions, right? Like emotions, it's literally energy in motion, right? Like
Hmm.
it's before it's any thought in the brain, like it's sensations in the body, right? Like
Absolutely.
that's the core of what emotion is. And we over intellectualize and we numb and we avoid. And I mean that's perpetuated by this like capitalistic society that's like, mind over matter. Like, what do you mean? No, you're fine. Keep going. Right. And so it's not encouraged for us to feel to feel the sensations in our body. Right. Like even, when people have little angry outbursts, like it's looked at as so taboo, right? Or people are crying in public, like in a lot of places and by a lot of people, it's still considered very taboo, right? And
Yeah,
it
shove it
should
down.
not be, right? Like, how is that serving us? Where is that getting us?
And so I guess like the call to action here, or what I really want people to like take away from this is like, how do we begin to really feel our feelings? And when we are able to fully feel our feelings, we can hold space for those people in our life that need to feel their feelings, whether that's the children you're raising, the family that you're living with, the friends that you have, the coworkers that you work with. Because when we are able to go deep within ourselves, and we can hold the space for other people to go deep.
Yeah. And this is very vulnerable and you don't have to be into it, but I'm wondering, would you like some space for that right now?
um, yeah, I guess. I process, like, I guess, in my own way. And so I've done some breath work to
Yeah.
try and help me like fully feel, getting me out of the mental pillar and like into my body to feel it. I've journaled about it. And so in this moment, I think the completion for me is I'm a teacher, just at heart. And
Yeah.
so I know that the full completion for me is taking what I've learned and seeing the perspective that I see from this particular situation, and how can I help other people conceptualize this and
Yeah.
make it impactful in their life.
Beautiful.
Hmm. Hmm. So, feeling your feelings. When I first tried to start feeling my feelings, was in what we call a feeler, sitting with yourself in a quiet space. Typically, you have someone just sitting there witnessing, holding the space for you, and just letting yourself notice body sensations. That was so incredibly hard for me. I'm like, this is so weird. And the whole time I'm talking in my brain, being like, what's supposed to be happening? Like, what's going on?
And well, and I don't know about you, but for me anyway, we're in the same program. We learned this together. But for me, it was like, wait, am I actually feeling a tingling in my foot, or did I make that up in my head? You know?
Yeah. Like the first step of feeling is just noticing body sensations. Like when you connect to your feelings, like your body is the guide, your body is the map, like it'll show you where to go.
And
But we are
trusting them,
so,
noticing them
yeah,
and trusting them,
but we
right?
are so cut off from that that we're like, that can't be right. And so beginning 5 minutes, 3 minutes, some people just need 1 minute. Can you sit in your bed, sit crisscross applesauce on the floor, set a timer, close your eyes, breathe, naming the physical sensation in your body,
Yeah.
starting there.
Without your mind planning your dinner or, well, I mean, maybe some of that happens to you, but even noticing that, right? Just becoming aware of your whole experience.
And as you get better at doing these little feelers, you can start noticing in real time, oh, that's triggering my system, or this is making me feel anxious. This is making me feel angry. This is making me feel irritated. This is making me feel uncomfortable. I want to dissociate. My
Yeah.
child came home and they're overstimulating me. And instead of being fully present and asking my child, what do they need? A hug or some food or a talk, I start to dissociate.
because there's so much more space, right? You can look at it all from a whole different perspective when we're like separate from these emotional states and not like merged with it, right? Like I am not anger, I am not anxiety, like I am experiencing this. I am, right? Like it is separate from me and it is something I'm experiencing, right? It gives us more choice in what we kind of do with it.
When we stop ourselves from fully feeling or being present in our bodies, we are robbing ourselves of living our most authentic life. We are
Absolutely.
robbing ourselves of living our best life, a more healed, a more grounded, a more secure, a more present life when we avoid feeling our feelings.
Well, and again, even speaking to like, yeah, because if we're avoiding the depths of the uncomfortable emotions, like we're also avoiding the depths of the really, like,
Yeah,
ooh, like good emotions, right? Like we can't avoid one depth without the other, right? So
absolutely.
if we're avoiding the depths, like we're staying in this very monotonous kind of middle zone, right? We're not experiencing like the highs and lows of like joy and sadness and just everything that contributes to again this like human experience, which is complex and
Absolutely.
beautiful and complicated and everything all at once. And that's, I mean, that's how it's supposed to be.
That is the art of being alive.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There cannot be any light without dark, and vice versa. And so, if we truly want to be living our best selves and achieve that goal or create that thing or have that beautiful relationship with ourself, a romantic partner, a family member, we have to be willing to go within, feel those feelings, take radical responsibility of the choices that we have made in the past, whether that was an active choice, a passive choice, a mistake, a pattern that was subconscious. We have to be able to go in and take radical responsibility for that. And then we have to choose to move in a different way.
The radical responsibility piece is so big.
It's the hardest,
So
one of the
big.
hardest parts.
Yeah.
It's something I've been talking about a lot lately
Me
is
too.
radical responsibility
Yeah.
because it means even when something bad has happened to you that you cannot control, there is a little tiny piece in there somewhere, if you dig around enough, that you could take responsibility for, and that can also set you very, very free.
Well, because fact of the matter is, and don't get me wrong, like at an earlier stage in my trauma healing journey, hearing this would have not resonated for me and triggered me very deeply.
Same.
But but right, like the world is a mirror, right? Like we have this like reticular activating system that's always looking to confirm our beliefs. Like that's what manifestation is. And manifestation is not just, oh, this like this hippy dippy process. It's something we're doing all of the time, just naturally without even thinking about it. Um, right. And so if something is coming into your experience, there's some pattern or something with you that has attracted that. And I say that with caution because obviously there are
Somebody's gonna
events
listen
where we
and be
would not
triggered.
absolutely and like I would okay, like things that I went through in my childhood, no, I still will not go back and be like, oh yeah, what I was doing attracted that into my experience. So obviously take that with a grain of salt. Like
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
never, I'm never trying to communicate that like something bad that happened to us that we were a victim
Like a
was
sexual
our
assault
fault.
to someone.
Absolutely. But I'm just saying that shifting into this mindset generally, like in a general sense, obviously using our discernment, oh my God, can it be empowering?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Here's an example for myself. I went a year and a half without speaking to my mother. And I was so angry with her, and there are still parts of me that is angry with her for the things that she has done or not done, the responsibility that she has not taken. And so for a long time, it was just like a wall, like, nope, you were in the wrong. I was the child. You were in the wrong. I was the child. You were in the wrong. I was the child. And that served me for about this amount of time, short amount of time. And then I was just like, why does this not feel still resolved in my body? And I was like, okay, what if I really look at this? What responsibilities can I take within this anger that I have with my mom, or this like not talking that I have with my mom? And it's like, I take responsibility of how I reacted to your actions because I didn't like that within myself. Like my mom would do something that would trigger me and I would go off the rails. Like it was a reaction. I developed this reaction to survive and I was angry and I would yell and I would say hurtful things. I was mirroring what she was doing, and I had to take responsibility for that, and I had to apologize to myself and be like, those things that I did not like. And so I have to take radical responsibility for the fact that I was enraged and I would say mean things and I would say hurtful things and I would yell because that's not the person that I am.
Yeah,
And that helped me heal so much.
absolutely.
I mean, I
And
was a
this
kid, I was a teenager, I was doing what I needed to survive, but by taking responsibility for my part, helped me heal.
Well, and another piece that I want to point out, and I don't know if this was with yours, but like taking radical responsibility, it's not necessarily like an out loud process, right?
No,
Like,
no.
can I even just give you like the tiniest little example of like,
Yes.
yeah, like uh, I don't know. We were out at a kind of family outing last week, um, and I don't have a car right now. I haven't had a car for 2.5 years. It sucks. I would like a car again. So I've had to rely a lot on people picking me up, dropping me off. And for someone who already has a deep, wound of feeling like a burden, that has been challenging for me. And so we were at this family thing like a week or so ago. Um, and my brother was just saying to my mom, like, oh, like he was trying to say he would drive me home after, but he's like, I guess I can drive you home after. Which I mean, to most people would be like a funny joke because it's like I literally
Right.
live a block away from you. But my reaction in that moment, I was like, can you stop acting like I'm a burden?
Oh,
Right? To which
oh,
he's like, what? Right. And so, I got calmed down. I didn't say anything else in that moment, but right, like as I go home, right, like I look at that and I'm like, okay, yeah, this part of me that still feels like a burden is still very much alive, very active. Right. And so instead of like looking at this trigger as like, oh, he's so mean, he triggers me, he makes me feel like a burden. Right. Which I very well could have done. In fact, I probably spent a lot of my life doing that, right? Like I was able, when I went home, like I was able to take some space with that part, like feel that part that's still very much alive and be like, yeah, this affected me because of my wounds, because of my triggers. And it's not like I'm saying to him, I take radical responsibility for,
right,
no, like it's not an
right.
out loud process a lot of
No,
the time. It's an internal process, but it's the stepping back and like looking at how how it comes from us, right?
absolutely.
Because just making them the bad guy and making ourselves, and again I say this word lightly, but like the victim all the time, like again now I'm speaking of that specific situation of making myself the victim of like he makes me feel like a burden. What a powerless situation, right?
Right.
Like I can't do anything from that place because he has control over my emotional state, my emotional well-being. We can't do anything from that place.
Right. Because he has the power.
Exactly.
He has the power to make me feel like a burden or not. I don't have the power to be a burden or not.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a perfect example of taking radical responsibility.
Like in just
And
a
yeah, it's
little
internal.
way. it is internal, right? And it's like
It
each
helps to
time,
make a shift. That yes, each
exactly,
time it makes
each
that little
time.
shift, and those little tiny micro shifts break a pattern.
Well, and each time, yeah. So there's more awareness, right? There's more time spent like, okay, yeah, this part of me's still alive. Like, well, obviously it's still alive, but like it's still very active. Let's feel some of that, right? So let's feel a layer of that. Let a layer of that kind of move through me, right? And I mean, yeah, eventually, like if you keep coming back to that, keep coming back to that part, keep coming back to that awareness, the awareness is going to be quicker and quicker to like eventually, like I will get to the point where someone can make a comment like that and it's not going to affect me in the same way
Mhm.
because that will no longer resonate with my shadow self, right? It will no
Yeah,
longer be an active part.
you start to break away from the things that are holding you back or holding you down or keeping you stuck. You don't identify with it anymore.
Yeah.
You create some space when you do that, when you take radical responsibility. And you have to pair that with fully feeling whatever it is that is coming up and or you are avoiding.
Yeah. Which is, hold that thought, which is exactly why a lot of us find it so much easier to just point the finger at the other person and be like, they did that to me. Because
Hello.
then we can avoid the whole process, right? Of like looking
Yes.
back at ourselves and feeling the icky stuff.
And this, I want to circle back just a little bit. This is a pattern that I see with children and their parents. It is easier for the parent to come in as the hero, the protector of that child, because you love that child, come into the school setting. This isn't all situations, but I will say it's 95%, and look at the school and be like, it's the school's fault that my child is making poor choice after poor choice after poor choice after poor choice. And I'm coming in as the protector and being like, you need to fix this as the school system, but really the patterns that they're playing out in school are patterns that they're playing out at home. And instead of just protecting your child, which that's the number one goal, it's love your kid, make sure they're safe and healthy, but how can we help our children and ourselves take radical responsibility for the choices and the actions that we make, fully feel them in our body, and then decide to move differently, because that helps us become critical thinkers, and it helps us have higher emotional intelligence, and we will assess situations from a different perspective moving forward.
Yeah.
It helps us live a better and full life.
Well, and I think, I mean, I think this goes without saying, but I'm just going to articulate it is
Yeah.
that I think the problem is that like, it's nobody's fault. Like it's not these parents' fault. Like they didn't get the mapping and the attunement and the emotional whatever from their parents and their parents before, right? So if we're looking to someone to blame, we got nobody because it goes back and
Yeah.
further and further and further. And so I think that's why there is such resistance and like, oh, I don't want to take responsibility because it's not my fault. But the thing is, if it's nobody's fault, then nothing's ever going to change. And so by taking
Correct.
radical responsibility, we're not saying it's my fault, but it kind of aligns with that quote that's like, you know, what happened to you is not your fault, but the healing is your responsibility.
100%. Like it stops with us. It has to stop with us. Like we have to stop the patterns for ourselves and for our future, you know, selves. Like we have to stop it. 100%. I cannot change what happened to me over and over and over again as a kid. But now that I'm an adult, an educated adult who really wants something for myself, I have to do the healing work because no one's going to do it for me.
Yeah.
I have to deep dive.
And again, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
1000%.
And we can't change other people. We can't change their actions. You know, we can have boundaries, right? And we can express when something like hurts us, like we can make it known, but at the end of the day, like our triggers are our responsibility, right? Our
Mm-hmm.
healing is our responsibility, and all we can control is ourselves.
So in this moment, I'm thinking about somebody who's listening to this right now, and they're at the very beginning, and they're in a family system, no matter their age, whether they all live with their family or they're living by themselves or they're married with children and they're by themselves. They're at the very beginning stages, and it's like, where do I start? Because I do want to break patterns. I do want to fully feel my feelings. I do want to take radical responsibility because I do want a different life that I'm living right in this moment.
Mhm.
If you had to give a suggestion, and then I'll give a suggestion.
Well, I mean, what's coming to mind is like you already shared that. I mean, so much of our journey started with feelers. So it seems like a pretty apt time to maybe introduce the concept of a feeler, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to do like you can do a feeler by yourself, but to truly do a good feeler, you have to have someone with you. And that was going to be my suggestion. It's like there 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 doesn't have to be anything inherently wrong with you. You don't need to be having a breakdown on the side of the highway to be like, I need a therapist, I need a life coach, I need a counselor, I need but it's okay to just want someone to support you. It's okay to just want someone to have a fresh perspective on your life. It's okay to want someone to guide you. It's okay to just want that.
And
And
to
I
be
don't think we
tuned to you and to mirror you and to help you see your blind spots, right? Like,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. I think we still we're making growth, but I think so many people think, well, if I have a therapist, then damn, and I say that out loud, that means something seriously wrong. Well, it's okay if there is, and there's okay if there isn't. It's okay to just receive help. We're not meant to do this by ourselves. And so I guess my suggestion is if you are really wanting to break these patterns, don't do it alone. Do it with someone. Whether that's a trusted friend or that's someone who is certified in an area that which you think is going to be beneficial.
Mhm.
And if you are going to do it alone, be listening to this podcast, be looking at different books and resources to support you on this journey because it can
Well,
feel so isolating.
and another thing I would add to that is like looking for resources on this journey if you're doing it alone is like even more specifically, like, if again, if you never had the map, right, of growing up of like what healthy repair looks like, what feeling your feelings looks like, what healthy anger looks like a map of all of this stuff, starting to seek out like, oh yeah, like this person, like when they handle conflict, like that's how I want to do it, right? Like seeking out
Yeah.
people that embody these things that you're wanting to start embodying. Get yourself a map in the form of a human. And you don't even
Yeah,
have
in the
to
form
know
of a
them.
human.
You don't even have to
No.
know them, right? Like I have asked this question before in some of my sessions with clients of like, yeah, like what would be an example of like a way that you would like to respond with conflict or anger or disagreement or right? And people will give me like examples from like Netflix shows and like and we'll like depict that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just when you start to surround yourself in the space of healing, like, who you are around is who you become. And so you really need to start surrounding yourself with the knowledge and the tools and the information and the space of self development, self growth, because it'll start to open your eyes to, the more of the situation that you're in and trying to break free from, if that
Absolutely.
makes sense.
And I think we also got to balance that too, because we can also just get
Go in
so
a rabbit hole,
we can get so
spiral.
sucked up in that world that it's like
I need to make
then
all the changes right now.
Well, and it's just this constant, like it's perpetuating patterns in another way because it's this constant striving of that which we don't yet have or that which we are not yet, right? So it's this constant, like, still not enoughness, right? So
Yeah,
it's like
absolutely.
the seeking and the learning and the healing and the rest and the integration and letting those concepts kind of come into your normal day-to-day life and experience, and then maybe more seeking and healing, right? Like it's a, again, it's an up and down, it's an ebb and flow like the rest of life, right? Like we need those still kind of content periods of our life where it's enough too,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Baby steps,
Yeah.
titration. You'll hear that word from us a lot. Just that little sips of safety, bringing in something new, sipping on that for a little bit, bringing in something new, sipping on that for a little bit.
Well, the word titration, I think it comes from chemistry, right? So it's just,
Really?
yeah, it's just adding like a
Eek.
little bit more. Okay, is that, a good whatever solution? I don't know chemistry, but like,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, just a little
Does
bit
this
more.
work?
Okay, just a little bit more, right? Because
Yeah.
yeah, it is in those like incremental small changes that our nervous system will be able to kind of expand and tolerate them and like sustain them. Whereas like if we go from 0 to 100 with something, our nervous system's like, oh, this is so far from my normal. I don't know what to do with this. And then we like contract back,
Crash.
right? And that's,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of what some people might call self-sabotage too, right? Like I don't think it's like this intentional, malicious,
No.
subconscious act that we do, right? It's like our
We're
nervous
always
system being
looking for
like,
comfort.
yeah. And it's like if we make too big of changes too fast, like our nervous system is like, I don't know what this is. This is new. This doesn't feel safe. Like, nope. And it just like retract, like we call it in in psychedelic integration type work, we call this like the rubber band effect, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
whoop, and sometimes you contract even like tighter than you originally were, right? So it's like, how can we make these small, subtle, incremental shifts that, like maybe even sub-perceptual, but our nervous system feels. And also within those small steps, how can we start to notice that subtlety and notice that difference? Right? I think so much of the time, so many of us either lump things as like, if it's not good, 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 it's bad. And there's this like
Mm-hmm.
huge zone in the middle of like neutral or like, all the middle range on the
Mm-hmm.
spectrum that we don't even like acknowledge. It's always like here or there, right? So with these small incremental shifts, it can be like, oh yeah, I think I'm like over here. And I mean, it doesn't feel bad, but it doesn't feel amazing, but it feels okay, right? It's this like middle zone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we do this in behavior with behavior modification for students all the time. It's like we need to pick one thing. We can't be doing all the things because it's too much, especially in the younger kids. But this made me think of a particular student who he would make these phenomenal strides and he would be going to class all day long, staying in class all day long. At one point, he had all A's in all of his classes. And then we're get like 3 weeks into him being like 100% successful. And I'm like, whoa, we did it. And he just crashed and burned. He did the most
Mm-hmm.
outrageous thing. And a few days later, we were able to actually process it. I'm like, why did you go right back? And not just right back, I mean, you up the ante in a way that you haven't done in a very long time. And he just admitted, like, doing so well in class, being a leader in class, having all A's, that felt overwhelming and I didn't feel like I deserved it.
Mm.
And I just went right back because that's what I knew. And so then I was like, okay, we need to work backwards. And I want you to write down a list of all the things that give you comfort, all the things that you know are unhealthy that you do when you're feeling this way. And we made a whole list, and he wrote down all the ways that he's disruptive, disrespectful, or the things that he does to, like, you know, feel comfort. And I was like, I need you to notice this every time you're about to go
Mm,
back. You have to remember that these are the comfort or the things that are familiar that are the wrong choice for you. And like, just notice that. And then I want you to say it out loud. I want you to be like, I feel like I'm about to go into that science classroom and tear it up. Oh, it's giving me a thumbs up. I want you to tell me, like, I'm feeling like I want to go into class and cause havoc. Like, just tell me that.
yeah,
And then let's make a plan to do something different.
yeah,
And we started doing that. And then that started giving him power over
yeah,
this need to go back to what was safe, what was familiar,
yeah.
because he was naming it in real time.
Well, yeah, and you're supporting him to identify it sooner before it's too late. And another piece from what you said that I wonder, because I see this a lot actually with, well, with myself and with my clients as well,
Yeah.
but is the piece of like, okay, so he was doing so well, and then you were like, yeah, right. And then you were seeing him in that, right? And there can be
Oh,
this trigger of like being seen in an identity to which you're not fully engaged with yet. And your system's like, oh God, this isn't my identity. I can't be seen like this. Like, let's go
too
back to
much
my real
pressure.
identity, right?
She's
And
too happy
so,
for me.
right, it's yeah, it's vulnerable to be seen in change like that, right?
Hmm.
Even myself, I'll be like, wow, I did this thing that I said I was going to do 7 days in a row, good for me. And then my system's like, okay, we're not going to do it tomorrow. Just because you said that, just because you said
Well, and it's sometimes it's like, I don't feel like I have control over this. So I'm going to make the decision I have control when I do that thing.
yes, 100%.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. That used to be my pattern with the gym. It's like I can go to the gym for 10 days in a row, and then it's like, well, I'm going to go when I want to go, and I don't want to go right now because I'm not going to let it have control over me. I'm going to have control over it. And then I just ruined it for myself because I didn't just not go the one day. I just accidentally didn't go for the next 2 weeks. Let's be honest.
Yeah, yeah,
Patterns,
yeah. I feel like
breaking
this
those
also
habits.
I feel like this also kind of speaks to the fact that we're both ADHD. And we like we have these like weird games we have to kind of play with our brains in order to kind of get them on board.
Yeah, like I have to, yeah, I have to trick myself. I have to set myself up for success. I got to have a little treat at the end, dangling carrot, like, come here, over here. I have to be
I s-
constantly reminding myself of the goal, and it can be mentally exhausting. And then you just want to throw it all away.
I saw this meme like 2 weeks ago. I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was something along the lines of like what it illustrated was 100% my process. I've just never been able to articulate it, but it was something along the lines of like, okay, don't tell yourself you're going to do the thing, but crawl on the floor over to the area where the thing would be done. Stand up, shake. Okay, now look at the thing, but with no intent of doing the thing. Maybe pick it up, maybe start doing the thing, but don't actually do the thing. Just, I'm like, oh my God, this is how my brain works. Especially with the
Yeah,
dishes. I'm like, just
I
start
was
doing.
just about to say, my thing is like if I want to convince myself to power clean the house, I mean, like get in there, do a deep clean, I will call my friend and be like, okay, in 45 minutes, I need you to FaceTime me. And I have to show you that my house is clean because I have to tell myself if a person walked in my front door right now, I would be mortified. I'd be like, oh my God, don't look at my house. So I have to tell myself somebody's coming over and they're going to be looking at your house. Do you want them to see it like this? I have to go and find myself some accountability.
Which is so interesting. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but it's just so interesting to reflect on because it speaks to how, like, oftentimes we can still be so motivated by shame,
Oh, heck
right?
yeah, girl.
And I'm not gonna lie, that's actually not how I operate. Like I know a ton of people who do, and like sometimes I'm like, oh, it might be helpful if I could operate a little more like that. But I don't operate like that at all. In fact, I have the opposite effect. Is like if I feel pressure, right? Or like that I'm going to be even, when I had a personal trainer, like it was that pressure and that trappedness just made me completely like shut down, run away, escape. Like it was like too much, right? And so I have to be able to completely like follow my body's whatever guidance and rhythms, which I mean is why I do struggle with consistency sometimes. So I mean, it all comes with
Mhm.
its pros and cons, right?
Yeah, and I think what's nice is, like, you and I both are sharing, this isn't an end result. Like, we are not perfect, but we have the tools to help ourselves. We have that mental awareness. We have the vocabulary. We're actively working on these little parts within our own personal lives. But it's not like, oh, Hunter and I are fixed. And you should listen to every word that we are saying because we are fixed and you are not.
Ew, gross.
I know. It's not how life works at all.
If I ever heard a podcast like that, I would, yeah, no, that would give me the ick, hardcore.
There isn't a single person on this planet that you can look at and be like, I love every aspect of their life. They are killing it in all aspects of their life. They have no flaws, no issues. They would tell you something else.
Yeah, I mean, social media will have you believing that, but behind the
Yeah.
scenes, yeah.
Everybody has something that they're working on,
Oh, at least one thing.
if not seven. No, I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
more. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
constantly.
But we're addressing it with ourselves. We're naming it. We're feeling into it. And then we're
Well,
choosing to move in a different way each time.
and again, I think, well, I was gonna say, like, bringing it back to like, I think the work in progress element of it can actually be like, if we, if we shift it the right way, like that can actually be like a really exciting
Mhm.
element of it. Like, wow, I get to do this the rest of my life. Like, I get to continuously evolve and create. And like, just when I thought my life and myself have gotten so good, it can get better. It'll get right. Like, like, there is no end. Like, it's infinite, right? Which is like so cool and so exciting, right? And I think this is where we can get tripped up though, if we're coming at it from the perspective of like, oh, I'm still not there. I'm still not enough. Like once I do this, then I'll be more healed and then I'll, right. And I think that's again where just gratitude comes in, right?
Well, and on this like journey, because it is a journey, it is like, you keep going. You start out and you can only feel so deep and you're only feeling into so many
Yeah.
topics. And then you heal that piece and then you take another step up. And then it gives you a little bit of space and then you can feel the next layer and you can go into the next layer. Like you're feeling in this loop cycle. It's like I can feel a little bit deeper and
It's a
into something
spiral,
new. Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
people will be like, oh, I thought I healed this. Like, why am I at this again? And I'm like, no, honey, we're at a
The
deeper level
next
of the
layer.
spiral. We're hitting it again, but the deeper, yeah, level of it.
But you end up with more tools each time. So it's not all of a sudden like you've been hit like, "Oh my god," like you're freaking out. The first time you ever truly like deeply look at yourself, you're probably going to freak out. I know that I did. I know a lot of people around me, the first time that they truly do that dive, it's like they're like feel like they're being hit with an overwhelming amount of sensation, but it doesn't feel like that every time. It's like that initial because then every time you gain more introspection, you have more tools to handle it, you have the vocabulary, and you can come at it with new angles every time. And it does get easier.
Well, and another thing is like, if we look at, and I think I can pretty well generalize this, but if you're the exception, then just ignore me. But I feel, I feel like generally, like as humans, like when we feel the best, it's because we've been faced with something that's stressful or hard and we've overcome it, right? Like
Yeah.
even workouts, like oh, it was hard and I did it. And then I feel so good. Oh, I got the degree. I worked my ass off for 4 years and I did it, right? It's always that like I've been faced with stress, like a healthy amount of, manageable stress, and I've overcome it, right? And so the fact that we keep getting hit with new, deeper layers of the puzzle and, things to unlock within ourselves, like, sure, it could seem like, oh, every time I think I've stood up, another thing hits me and I'm always on the ground, on the curb. Like we can look at it like that, but we could also look at it like, okay, here's like another opportunity to like leap higher, right? Because if we weren't faced with these things, we wouldn't get the feeling of overcoming them,
Right.
right? So like the crunchiness actually propels us higher each time. And if we didn't have those moments, then like it just wouldn't feel as ecstatic or as joyful or as whatever. Like we think, oh yeah, like if these things didn't happen, I would, or sorry, if these things didn't happen, I would just be happy all the time. Would you though?
Hmm.
Right? Like there would be no challenge. There would be no, right?
Up and flow of life, the ebb and flow of
Yeah.
life, that light and that dark. Yeah, and they can look at it like, oh, how many times have you been knocked down? Yeah, but how many times have you gotten back up? And you're okay.
Well, I just, to an extent, like I mean, not in a big way, but like I expect, you know, the knockdowns to some extent, right? I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, what are we gonna be hitting on this season, right? And then when I go through whatever periods of depression, periods of sickness, like a struggle in my job, but whatever, it's like, all right, here she is. What's this one for, right? Like, what is this trying to teach me?
I think anybody who has actively chosen, I'm going on this healing journey, I'm going into myself, would all agree with you get to a certain point where you start saying to yourself in real time when it's heavy, you go, okay, what's the lesson?
Yeah,
What's the lesson? Like, what am I meant to learn? What am I meant to take away? What do I get to heal from this? Instead of it feeling like it's just like crushing you, it's like, okay, this is happening and it sucks and I'm crying and I'm stressed and I'm overwhelmed and I don't really know when this is going to end. Is it going to end tomorrow? Is it going to end,
yeah,
3 days from now? When am I going to feel the clarity? But I feel like anybody who's gone through this has said to themselves more and more and more. I know that I do. What's the lesson?
yeah. Instead of why is this happening to me,
Mhm.
right? It's like, what is this trying to teach me? What is the lesson here? What can be extracted from this?
What's my positive takeaway?
That perspective shift alone,
Woo, game changer.
literal game changer,
But it's
right?
uncomfortable to do that at first
Yeah,
because you're like, fuck you. What do you mean the lesson? Why are you trying to make this positive? Do you see what's happening to me?
yeah,
There's nothing good that's
absolutely.
coming from this. Stop trying to push your toxic positivity on me. Well, honey, that's not toxic positivity. That's like, let's actually like absorb what's going on and how can we move differently. And that is what I mean when I say that from the beginning of this podcast, when we rob our children of fully feeling the lesson or the weight of our actions, we cannot
Yes.
move differently. We take their tools away. We
Yeah.
take their critical thinking away. We take their ability to see it from a better perspective when we don't let them fully feel it all the way through and take the lesson and embody that lesson. And then we don't do that for ourselves either. And so we're just out here cycling, same pattern, same pattern, same pattern.
Well, and I mean, like it's already happening, right? You can't change that. You can't stop it. Like it's already happening. So while we're here, may as well get something from it. Take something from it, right? Like because I mean, the more we like resist and fight the thing that's happening, the more we're gonna suffer, right? Like sure, like it's not like wow, yay, this is happening. No, but it's like, can we at least try to resist it a little less, right?
Mm,
See what we can take out of this. I can almost guarantee you it will be less painful. Right? And that's part of just moving with the flow of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So should we, and I'm open to doing it if you don't want to do it. Should we, because we've talked about it so many times, should we do a little feeler
A
to
feeler. Yeah,
wrap
we
her up?
definitely can. Yeah, I can either hold space for you or you can hold space for me. Either works.
What would you prefer?
I can demonstrate if you want to hold the space.
Yeah, that sounds good.
If you
So
want to explain to them.
yeah, so we're just gonna do probably like a minute, right? Like just a really quick demo. But I think when we both started, it was 2 or 3 minutes.
Mhm.
But yeah, so the idea is that I'm going to set a timer so that I can hold the space and she doesn't have to wonder, like how long are we going to be in this? Does someone got me? And then I'm going to invite Riley to just kind of close down the eyes or soften her gaze and just go inward for a minute. And if she'd like to, she can share the sensations or the thoughts or the emotions that are starting to pop up for her. Or it might be something she just notes internally. And I'm just going to hold that loving space for her for a minute and just witness her in this process. And so, Riley, if you're ready to begin,
And I'm
actually,
going to
you,
go audible because for anybody
yeah,
who's listening on Spotify, then they'll know what's going on.
yeah. So, actually, I should ask you, is 1 minute good or would you prefer longer?
Let's go 2. Let's go 2
Two?
minutes.
Okay,
Personally, I like to just name the physical sensations in my body before I notice the emotional sensations in my body.
beautiful. And good to
Helps
know.
me
Yeah,
drop out of the
yeah.
mind.
So people have a sense of your process and everyone's process will look different. Um, but yeah, you let me know when you'd like me to begin, and then I'll let you know when there's 30 seconds left, and then at 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
So I'm just going to name what I would be thinking in my mind quietly. I'm sitting crisscross applesauce on my chair. And so I can really feel the weight of my body in the chair.
Mm-hmm.
I did a full body lift today so I can feel my back is nice and tight. My arms are a little sore. My eyelids feel heavy. I clenched my jaw all night in my sleep, so my jaw is just feeling so tight.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just noticing that my awareness wants to go just underneath my diaphragm.
Mm-hmm. 30 seconds.
Just feeling very grounded,
Mm-hmm.
very at peace in this moment.
All right, so that's 2 minutes. Does that feel complete, or would you like some more time?
No, that feels good.
Okay. And do you want a pop-up question?
Sure. Bring me back into the mind.
Okay. What's your favorite like fall food or drink item that you look forward to every year?
Mm, fall food is like that cold as the cold weather comes in. I love good broccoli cheddar soup,
Mm, mm.
and I love like a hot tea.
Yeah. Any particular kind?
Yeah. It depends on kind of what mood I'm in. I love a good like jade citrus mint tea.
Okay.
Yeah. Like we have a really good tea spot downtown, and they have these like jasmine oolong
Oh, yeah, yeah.
tea, like the little balls
Yeah.
that expand. Mm, so good.
Can you like taste it right now?
A little bit. I can smell it. It has such a good aroma. I think that's why I love tea, is the aroma aspect of
Yeah.
it. Sit here, do my little feeler, do a little breath work holding a hot cup. Oh,
Yeah. So for those of you listening and watching, yeah, that's something we learned as well in our program is like sometimes it could be a little bit jarring to come from this very inner experience back to like the outer and being re-engaged. So sometimes it's supportive to kind of ask a little question that slowly shifts us back up into the mind, something fun and light. So that's what that was. But
as As
go
far as
ahead.
like a as far as like a feeler, like I do this a lot with one of my other friends who also facilitates, and she will say to me like, I feel stuck. I feel like I need to cry, but I can't get myself to
Mm,
cry because I'm so overstimulated. She has 3 children, and she's like, I'm overwhelmed and I've got so much going on that I don't have the spaciousness to like process. And then I will say, do you want a feeler? And we'll go into her office, or we'll sit on the couch while the kids are playing in the backyard or downstairs. And for 2, 3 minutes, I will just sit, and she will just start talking through those physical sensations. And I mean, almost like every time she will have herself the healthy emotional
mm,
release, and then comes some clarity around why she's feeling so agitated. You can do that with yourself. You can do that with your friend. You can do that with your partner and just say, can you just sit here and just witness? There's something magical about having someone hold the space and witnessing.
yes,
And it
absolutely.
doesn't have to be auditorily. It can just be like, I need somebody to just sit here with me, and I'm going to do this all quietly in my body.
Yeah. It provides like an anchor. Like you can physically feel it when someone's there holding that for you,
Mhm.
right? And how,
And we do this work, and you can attest to this. When we, as facilitators, are holding space for our clients, and I do this with my students as well, like when you start feeling a contraction in your throat, I can feel the contraction in my throat.
oh yeah,
And if you don't know your body, I will say, are you feeling constricted in your throat? Maybe put your hand right there. And they're like, how do you know that? It's because we attune to each other.
yeah, the power of attunement. Yeah, there's a lot that can be picked up in the resonant field, right? Like it's all energy.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious, just as we start to kind of wrap up our episode for today, but I was curious how that experience was for you today, like on the podcast live with me. Like what was
I
your,
felt proud. I felt very grounded, very
yeah,
centered. It's great to just like have space. Sometimes it's nice to even do it when you're feeling good. You don't have to be feeling good or
absolutely.
bad
Let's
to do a
anchor that
feeler.
in. It helps you
Let's do
anchor in
it.
the good stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So then for me, I'm like, oh, I actually am feeling, sometimes we're feeling better than we think we are.
Yeah.
And so that just solidified to me. I'm like, oh, Riley, you're doing fine. You're grounded. There's nothing active coming up in your system. How wonderful is it that we get to model this for other people?
Yeah.
Just feeling happy and proud.
And the comment you said about I'm doing better than I think I am. Oh man, that's huge. Because again, like if our default patterning in our nervous system is urgency patterns, is flight patterns, right? Like your brain might just always think you're in that state, even though your body's actually
Survival.
not, right? And so like
It
in
has
that
taken.
moment, they got to check in with each other, right? And it was like basically your system got to orient to safety, right?
Mhm.
And so it was like a, oh, we're actually okay. You're good, right? You can relax the muscles, you can breathe deeper, you can sit taller. like there's actually not a threat right now, right? So in fact, I would almost say it's equally as important to do it when we're feeling neutral, when we're feeling good. It's not just when we're feeling crunchy,
And you know what
crunchy.
can help you acknowledge that is journaling. Like journaling, it's so crazy if you just sit down and journal and not like I mean, you can do it this way, like, dear diary, no, you can just free flow on a piece of paper.
Or
Sometimes
point
that is when
form.
yeah. Or
Yeah.
sometimes I'll draw like a picture, I'm doing like diagrams and it's just like, stuff is coming out. But sometimes I notice how great I'm doing because of what came out on
Yeah.
paper. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that was all positive. That was all like creativity. That was all
Yeah.
goal oriented. Oh, I'm not in this like lull.
Yeah. And just so everyone knows, I'll just take a minute to drop this for you. Riley has actually created this beautiful journey. I mean that too.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
journal, which can really support you with this. Like it's a great tool. She is selling it. So we will kind of add the link
We could
somewhere
put
in
the
the
link.
comments. Yeah.
Yeah, we could
In
add
case
the
you want
link
to
in the
check that out.
comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Support you on your journey.
trauma-informed, like, shadow work journal. It'll take you 6 months. If you use it every day, it would last you 6 months. There's weekly check-ins. There's over 100, like, somatic shadow work journal prompts that you can use or not. It's your choice. There's 7 steps to, like, getting clear on what your goals are for yourself. There's a halfway point reflection. There's a final reflection. It's packed with resources. Yeah, you can order one and it'll ship straight to your door.
It's good stuff.
It's called the Unbecoming Journal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to the
Thanks.
end of today. What do you say?
a- Absolutely. Thanks for feeling your
Yay.
feelings, you guys. That's
Yeah.
your goal.
Well, and making it to the end of our episode today, I think it was a little longer, but we hope that you took some nuggets out of it and maybe some tools or practices that might be worthwhile for you to start exploring. And
We'll
yeah.
see you in the next episode.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us on The Art of Being Alive. We hope today's conversation brought you closer to understanding the ways we can all live more fully and intentionally. Remember, the journey to wellness is unique for each of us, and we're here to support you every step of the way.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us reach more people like you. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, feel free to reach out to us on social media or comment down below. We love hearing from our listeners and building this community together. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep exploring the art of being alive.